Thanks again, Dennis, for hopping on to another episode of Untapped Stories. I know we were chatting a bit before show, and you and I are from the same area, so I kind of know a bit about your background. But maybe for some of the audience who learn about you for the first time, maybe they've seen your stuff on socials, but they haven't gotten the full Dennis Stanton scoop. If you can go back in time and just give people kind of an overview of your athletic background, where you grew up, what sports meant to you as a kid, and then kind of how that shaped the person and coach you ultimately became.
Yeah, thanks, Gene. Thanks for having me on here. This is really cool what you're doing, and obviously the business that you build is awesome. I've been talking to you from the very beginning of it to see how it's grown. It's just unbelievable. So congrats on that. But like as you said, yeah, I grew up in the same area. I went to LaSalle High School. Kind of dabbled in a bunch of different sports there. Played golf, tennis, football, basketball, but obviously really loved the basketball and. Went to Ursinus College, played at Ursinus College, had a great experience there, met my best friends in the world there, and really kind of came into my own as a basketball player, kind of fell in love with the process of getting better. I think I really devoted to just individual skill improvement by myself in a gym, really like right before high school, and then that really kind of took off in college, and that's where I saw like my biggest gains and biggest improvements as a basketball player. I had a great experience there, played for a great coach in Kevin Small. He just really infused confidence into me and made me believe that I could, maximize my potential as a basketball player. From there, went overseas, and coming from Division III is never easy to play overseas, especially back then. It might as well have been Division 12, but I got lucky. Started out at a really low-level league in Denmark and loved every part of it. And Denmark's really an awesome place, an awesome country, but the basketball wasn't great. I didn't even have a car. They gave me a bike. I lived right next to the gym, so I just rode that bike everywhere throughout that country. And then I made a nice jump to Poland, which would be kind of like going from like Ursinus or Hopkins level to like almost like a St. Joe's. Like it was a big jump, which was cool.
Okay.
And then I played in Italy and Spain and Austria. Came back, jumped right into coaching. I started coaching at Souderton High School and taught English. I was a head coach there, taught English. Did that for 2 years, loved it, enjoyed it, found myself really gravitating more towards the basketball. So I said, let me try to do this full time. Went back to Ursinus and I taught in their exercise sports science department. They have a coach trainer there, yeah, which is really cool. Coached against you, you beat up on us. And I did that for 2 years, realized that like the college scene wasn't really for me with respect, I had 2 young kids at the time. Jumped back to Souderton as athletic director, and I think I'm in year 10 or 11 as athletic director at Souderton High School. All the while I started a very small basketball training camp business right when I graduated college in '04, every level basketball, which is camps, clinics, lessons, training, and then we just started AAU last year. So that's really been like my passion project all along the way. That's been like the one staple that I've had in my life. I would go overseas, come back, do this in the summer, go overseas, come back, do this in the summer, and just try to build it up a little bit. And it's been a blessing. It's been a lot of fun.
That's an awesome story, man. I think cool things to unpack there. I guess that one piece, taking a little bit farther back from when you went from middle school to high school, you said you did a lot of skills training on your own. Maybe because most of our audience, it's either parents or athletes who are elementary, middle school, trying to make that jump. What did you do on your own back then? Like, say if kids don't have access to a private coach and they, maybe they're in a remote area, they can't find somebody local. How can you help yourself get better in the gym, just, completely solo when it's you, the ball in the hoop?
Yeah, I love that question because it's really, it's like I don't want to say it's the only way to get better. You can get better. You obviously can get better. Coaching and mentoring and training is super important. But if you really want to maximize your potential, you have to love the process by yourself. There's no other way about it. We're getting our basement done inside, and they're redoing all the drywall, and it's really loud in there. So I came out here. This is our garage. I got 3 kids, and I love my children to death, but I'm training them, right? So they're not really out here on their own. So when someone's training you, there's a decreased level of an emotional investment. And when you drop that emotional investment, the reps don't become hollow, but they become less meaningful. When you're practicing by yourself, there's a different level of emotional investment and physical investment because you're wanting to do it on your own. And that's where I truly believe that players can get better, and that's any sport. We tell people all the time, teams get better at practice, individuals get better on their own. So in a practice, coach has to do offense, defense, baseline, sideline out of bounds, all these different schematics. There's only so much they can do with you from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. So you got to find time to practice on your own or with a trainer or whatever it might be. But when I was in 8th grade is when it really started. Our head coach at LaSalle was a guy named Marty Jackson, and he handed me this packet. It was a Steve Alford shooting drill. Steve Alford was a great shooter. I think he played for Indiana, played on the national team, in the Olympics, and then coached Division I for a while. I don't know if he's still coaching. Coached UCLA. But anyway, super, super simple, boring workout. You spin the ball to yourself. You shoot 15-footers. You shoot off the bounce. You shoot threes. You shoot layups. And it's a 1 hour workout. And I did that 6 days a week, probably from like 8th grade till 28. I just became obsessed with it. Yeah. So like when we would practice, if we practice 3 to 5, I'm there at 2. If we practice 5 to 7, I'm there at 4. And I needed to get that work in before we had our own practice, because I know there was a diminishing margin of return with respect to how many shots you were actually going to get up in a practice. The best coaches could get up about 150 shots in the context of 2 hours, but that's hard to do, And so I kind of saw the writing on the wall that I wasn't athletic, I wasn't fast, I wasn't quick, so I was going to really lock into to dribbling and shooting. And that drill is so simplistic, so basic. We've showed it to probably 40,000 people over the course of the last 25 years. We show it to 3,000 people every single year, and there's probably 5 kids a year that actually do it 5 days a week. And all those kids end up being really successful. We post it all the time. We actually posted. I actually had a full hip replacement last fall, so I can't really demonstrate as much anymore. But one of our coaches demonstrated it in the fall, or in the summer. Really good shooter. He plays at Jefferson. His name is Julian Sadler. And the drill it's a 1-minute video of him spinning and shooting, and me kind of talking about what you need to do. You need to work on your footwork. You need to work on your handwork. You need to spin the ball to yourself. You need to rebound. Like super simple stuff. I think it has like 500,000 views. Because it's crazy, because it brought up people saying you need a trainer, you don't need a trainer, you need this, you need that, and
controversy.
I think the answer is you got to have both, right? But if you don't have the individual work, Gene, like all of your coaches, your 3,000 coaches that are working with kids, if those kids aren't doing stuff outside of the AU stuff, they're not going to get better. We're providing, and your coaches are providing them with these tools. Here's the playbook, here's the blueprint, and we're gonna go for an hour this week or 2 hours. But if it's hollow the rest of the week, you're not gonna find results.
100%. We've seen that every day. I mean, we have some clients who work with coaches once, twice a week, but it's never 6, 7 days a week. Those other 4 or 5 days, you got to be on the field, in the gym, by yourself, doing work, whether it's strength and speed or actual skills. And the best coaches would admit that too. Right? Just like you, I trained for a long time. Every athlete, I had them doing individual workouts, and I would give them a packet to do for those extra 5 days. But you can tell if they're not doing it right. Like they come back to you, they're not getting sharper over those 2 or 3 months. It's like, okay, we can keep training, but you're never going to take that step forward if you don't put in the work by yourself.
Yeah, it's so true. And there's an inherent benefit, when you're doing it by yourself, you're building a metal. You're building this armor that you're doing it for yourself. And when you step on the court or the field or jump in the pool or get on the track, after having built up that armor individually, there's a sense of confidence and self-trust that you've built up in yourself. And all of a sudden, that skill acquisition it's garnered a little bit differently when it comes to transitioning that into a game.
100%. And I think maybe going back to one of the things you mentioned, it's a kind of a hot topic in youth sports today, but at LaSalle, which is honestly pretty tough to do because I know how rigorous the Catholic League is in the Philadelphia area, but I think you mentioned 4 sports there. Was it golf, basketball? Did I hear tennis, or am I making that up? Golf,
yeah, tennis and football.
And football too. Jeez, man, football's a time investment. I guess at LaSalle, how did you balance playing 4 sports and succeeding academically and I'm assuming basketball was probably your best sport, but for I guess the larger conversation is the multi-sport athlete. I think that's really dying, especially in high school. But we see a lot of benefits, and we've published a couple articles about the benefits of playing multiple sports as long as you can. So I guess what would your take on that be to young athletes who, they love hoops, but burnout's a real thing at a young age?
Yeah. I think, I wasn't a true 4-sport athlete. I dabbled in every sport. Freshman year, I played soccer my whole life, loved soccer, tried out for soccer, got cut, went and played football, freshman football at LaSalle, which is serious football, and I really enjoyed it. I played wide receiver, rarely ever touched the ball, rightfully so. The other wide receiver went to Duquesne, and that was when freshmen played freshmen. No freshman played on JV. It was awesome. And then my brother and I, he was a year above me, we played tennis, I think for 2 or 3 years, and then our golf coach was the basketball coach, and golf is real serious at LaSalle. It's scratched 5, And so I was the worst player on the team, but I made it my senior year, so I played golf. And I ended up playing golf and basketball at Ursinus as well. But, I think you said it best, play as many sports as you can as long as you can. And then I don't judge anybody if they have aspirations of playing at the next level and they're 14, 15 years old, they're freshmen or they're a sophomore. And we see it all the time at Souderton as athletic director. And I'm selfish. Like, I want that kid to play soccer and basketball. I want that kid. We have a lot of field hockey, lacrosse overlap. We have a lot of football, lacrosse overlap. Like, we want both of those, right? But when a kid comes to me and says, look, I want to try to play at Westchester, I want to try to play at Lehigh, I get it, because at 15 years old, there's a shelf life, and there's only a certain amount of hours in the day. And, I hate even saying this, but when you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, if you want to play at the next level, and only a certain amount of people can do that. So, if someone is good enough to do it and I know they're going to commit the time, I'm all for it. But if someone's not good enough and they're not going to commit the time, you might as well have fun and enjoy every sport that you can. From a youth standpoint, I almost look at it the same way, but just not as intense. So, like, try to play every sport until you don't like the sport. As soon as you lose a passion for it, the second my kids say, I don't want to go to practice or I don't want to try out for a team, we don't sign them up. My kids played soccer for 6 years and they stopped enjoying it. And when we would go to drive to Allentown, they didn't want to do it. So, we don't play soccer anymore. The second a parent has to force a kid to do something, it's almost done. It almost never works. And they're not invested. The parents aren't invested. Then there's kind of like this inherent passive aggressiveness when the parent gets in the car, that they're devoting all this time and energy and the kid doesn't want to be there. It's just a bad situation. So kind of what you said earlier, try to play as many sports as you can for as long as you can. As soon as you see that you don't like it and you're not passionate about it, that's when you pivot and go in a different direction. We've seen so many awesome stories where, right now we have a girl who's she should be first team all-league field hockey. She's going to play at Stevenson, which is a good Division III program. Got cut as a 7th and 8th grader at Indian Valley Middle School, made our JV team, played JV as a freshman, sophomore, and last year played a little bit, and now she's one of the best players in the league. Like, we see stories like that all the time where, if you actually are passionate about a sport, and I think that passion for her was a little bit more crystallized because she wasn't playing 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade travel field hockey, right?
Yeah.
And now she's able to really kind of embrace that passion, and the work doesn't feel like work because she hasn't been doing it as long, There's only a small segment of the population that can really relinquish to the process of daily grind for an extended period of time. There's only a certain amount of athletes. We have 1,300 athletes right now at Souderton. There's 15 that can actually do that, that are really committed 6 days a week, grinding for more than just the high school level. We have a ton that are doing it for 4 years, which is awesome,
You've seen a lot of kids, and I didn't plan to ask this, but if I'm a parent, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of, I have a good athlete, maybe not amazing yet, could be like that girl you were talking about, and, could become a college field hockey player if they put in the right work. What do you think separates the 10 athletes from the 1,300 that do wind up putting in the time? Is there a certain characteristic that you see as an athletic director, or is there a certain trait in these kids where they just somehow, some way love to, grow to love the grind?
Yeah, it's so funny because I always ask those parents, I get to know some of those parents because you're with them for 4 years, and I'll say, we had a kid, her name's Casey Harder, unbelievable basketball player. She led the Big Ten in minutes last year for Northwestern. Casey, if you're listening, keep going. I remember when she was a senior at Souderton, we were very good. She was very good. And I remember asking her dad, are you telling her to go there? Are you pushing her to go there? And he said, I would never push her. It was always her saying, Dad, let's go, let's go, let's go. So you're asking me what even this gym, there'd be times where the Y would be closed. We were playing in the district playoffs, and she would bring a trainer here to this garage all the way from Souderton on the day of a game just to get shots up, I remember. Yeah, unbelievable. But if you're asking what's that trait, that trait is there's something internal, whether it's through failure, they failed and they don't want to feel like this anymore, or just it's inherent, it's in them that they want to be great. I really don't believe that any extraneous motivation or challenging is going to work. It just, especially on the part of parents, you could do everything you want, sign them up for everything, any type of AAU, club, blah, 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 blah. If they actually don't want it, they're not going to see results. So, what that trait might be, honestly, it's just inherent. It really is inherent. There's something inside of them that wants it, whether that's driven through failure, whether it's driven through a friend that they play with and they want to beat that friend. I know that for me, that's what it was. Like my best friend, Brian Horgan, who was a great player at LaSalle, then played at Kings, and my brother, who was a year older than me, first team All-Catholic, really good basketball player at LaSalle. Those two guys were really good. They were always better than me, and I just wanted to beat them, and that was my driving force. I think it's inherent, Gene. I don't think there's like this character trait that really, I mean, other than working really hard and being committed, like I just think it's inherent.
And I like what you said there, though, too, because we talked to a trainer, high-level trainer based in L.A., Sean Gerardo, a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned that during practice and during his lessons, he tries to expose kids to failure. So setting up drills to the point where, he doesn't want them to fail, but naturally, because the drill is so hard, they're going to. And that will shape some of the kids to be like, I don't want to drop that ball again. I don't want to miss 10 shots in a row again, so I'm going to work hard at that drill. And naturally, you just get better as you do that. So I think there's little tidbits maybe parents and kids can take where, like, of course, everyone's going to fail in a big game. But even during training and those hours where you're by yourself, just don't make things so easy. And then you'll kind of see what you're made of if you want to get back at it the next day, or if, missing those 10 shots just kind of curbs you.
We use something similar, like we call it the fast forward method. Like when you don't want to work out, when you don't want to train, just fast forward 90 minutes from now. Like, what are you going to feel like? So similar to what you're saying, with the failure piece, like you're going to feel better once you're done training, and those little habits that you can build in sometimes, in a 7-day work week, if you work out 6 days a week, 3 days, you're not going to want to work out. So those 3 days, you got to find a way to trick your mind into doing it, and we've seen success with that with some of our athletes.
That's how the best get really good, man. And maybe you brought it up earlier, but I did want to touch on this in general. I think there's a big misconception around, especially nowadays, and how much access there is to playing overseas and the resources that D3 players have. But I was in the same boat as you. I didn't think about, I'm calling it quote unquote playing pro. I played in Ireland, probably the lowest level in Europe. And you started there, you started in Denmark, but then you jumped to Poland, you jumped to Italy. For guys that make it to D3, they have long-term hoop dreams, but they think because they didn't make D1 that it's all over and they're just going to, play for 4 years and focus on academics. Like, what would your message be to guys who still want to play pro, even though they're starting out D3 in today's landscape where, NIL is rampant in D1, the transfer portal is real, and again, I think there's just a lot more access to resources overseas now.
Yeah, I think the reality is, accessibility is huge, with respect to how good you are, but there's been a lot of basketball players, Division II, Division III, that have gone overseas and really done well. And, I think it's all about putting yourself in the right environment, because when they look at a highlight film, Hopkins at Swarthmore, and there's 1,000 people at Swarthmore, and it's a small gym, it might not look great on behalf, when a GM's looking at it or when an agent's looking at that. That's why it's important. You got to put yourself in an environment, and there's so many bad exposure camps when it comes to European basketball, but there's a couple good ones. If you get to a couple of good ones and you're good enough, you're going to be seen, and it is a meritocracy. Once it comes to like getting up and down the court and competing against players, like when it was Hart Sports Management, Mike Hart, I think he's still doing it. My agent, his name was Jim Klebanoff. He was an awesome guy who now works for the Denver Nuggets. Jim's still local. He's a scout for the Denver Nuggets. He got me into this camp in Vegas after my first year, and it was all Division I guys, all high-level pros, and it was a 2-day camp, and I played as good as I could have played. Like, I shot the ball really well. My team played well. There was like a guy from Maryland on my team, a guy from Syracuse, a guy from St. Joe's. Like, it was all really good basketball players. And like, within that next week, I had like 7 contracts, one in Poland, 1 in Germany. So like, I do think it becomes a meritocracy once you're in that right of environment. So if you're a really good Division III basketball player, like the 2 best players in the Centennial right now could score 12 points a game at Bucknell. Like, that's just the way it is in my opinion, right? And the two best players at Bucknell can score, 2 best players in the Patriot League could score 15 points at that next level up, whether that's A10 or whatever it might be. So it's just a matter of like getting exposed at that point and put yourself in a position to play. If you're not a killer in the Division III level at a high level league, it will be very difficult. Like, you have to have the stats, you have to have the resume, but once you actually get on the court, it does become a meritocracy. Those agents, those GMs, they're trying to feed their families, so like they're going to pick the best players. So I would give it everything you have. Like, if you had a really good Division III career and it's something that you want to do, I remember going on Eurobasket and sending out tons of emails to coaches and things before I signed with an agency like that. I tried everything to play. I wanted to do it. I wanted the cultural experience. So if it's something you want to do in your Division III basketball or Division II basketball, there's been a lot of success stories that people have done it.
I love the networking piece there too. We've heard it probably goes the same for getting into college, and it sounds like what you did for the overseas route. But a lot of parents, athletes nowadays will just, whether it's through Instagram or email, they'll send their clips to coaches where they want to go, and I think that still plays a factor. Like, you can wait for coaches to find you, of course, if you are that good. But if you're solid, like a really good player, but you don't have all the tape, you don't have all the buzz around you right now, kind of like you said, dive into your network, go to these camps, send emails, call coaches. Like that stuff does work. Coaches want to see somebody who's putting their foot forward and not just waiting for them to be found. So I think, again, if you're an athlete hearing this or a parent hearing this, like, there are options, and you can be proactive is the thing. It's not just sitting on your heels and waiting for a coach to show up on the sidelines of a Friday night game. Like, you can go out there and, put a little bit of outreach in place and actually try to get to where you want to be if you, put in those calls and those emails.
Yeah, and to that note, like what we tell our student athletes at Souderton is really use the coach as the conduit, right? Because what you're saying, Gene, is super important, and they want to see that. But like recruiting services and email parents, emails from parents or emails from student athletes, that inbox of that assistant coach, he's getting flooded every single day, right? But when they get an email from the head coach of St. Joe's Prep or the head coach of Souderton, even if they don't want your son or daughter, they want that relationship with the coach. They want that next kid. They want the sophomore. So they're going to respond to you about that senior. So it's more work for our coaches. But what I would say to any parents that are listening right now, like, your coach wants to help, right? And your coach likes basketball or field hockey, tennis, golf, whatever it is. They want to help in that recruiting process, so use them as the conduit. Secondarily, use the club coach as well. Like, the same thing, like that college coach, it's a relational business. They want that relationship with the club coach as well, so use them as a conduit. And the proactive piece, like you're saying, Gene, is super important. The way to be proactive in using the coach as the conduit is you got to get all the work done early. Create a spreadsheet of here's all the schools you want, and then just go online and just get all the email addresses. So that coach just needs to cut and paste. Then you get your transcript from your guidance counselor. It takes 14 seconds. Then you get your YouTube video of your highlight. Then you get your schedule, and then the coach just has to plug and place. So I don't want to kill all the high school coaches out there, but if you and the kid want to do it, that's why I tell our parents, I'm like, look, it's going to take you 2 hours to do what I'm asking you to do, and then the coach is going to spend 2 hours, and we're going to reach a ton of coaches.
That's really smart. And at the same light, try to find a coach who can probably use email. I think my high school coach, Speedy Morris, would have taken him 3 days to send a couple emails. He was about 75 when I worked with him. But
Matt Griffin could have done it for him. He was the assistant, Get the assistant.
Very good point.
Yeah.
What about when you actually made it to overseas, Dennis, before we kind of transition to some of the training questions and day-to-day stuff now, but like when you're overseas for, again, maybe a D3, D1, D2 guy or girl, whoever it is, they get there, it's their first year. I know I had this experience myself, and it was a bit of like a culture shock, but what's maybe one thing that people don't really understand about playing overseas that you learned from your journey?
I think it goes back to like when I was in college, I was like super committed to like 2 or 3 things. Like I wanted to get really good grades, and I wanted to get really good at basketball. And I actually was like a man of faith. Like I'll go to church a lot and pray and things like that. So like those 3 things made me really successful. So then I just carried that on, to overseas. What made it easier I just couldn't believe all the time. Now I had so much more time to train. I had so much more time to get better. So, you're practicing 4 hours a day or 3 hours a day, like, 1 in the morning, one in the evening. There's a lot of other free time to maximize that time. And I think that transition can be tough for certain players that aren't used to that. I love the free time. I love just like walking into the city or getting on the bike or driving somewhere, taking a nap or whatever. I mean, it was unbelievable. I loved all that stuff. I think where it became difficult for me, they say envy is the thief of joy. Like when I became 27, 28, and I'm looking at my buddies and they're all like doing really well in their jobs, and some of them are getting married, I kind of felt like life was passing me a little bit, and I'm like, And then once you start like mentally not locked in that type of profession, you can really, your goals can really deviate. And I think that's what happened with me a little bit. And looking back, I wish I would have had patience. I wish I would have, because I could have probably played 2 more years, I think. I mean, my body's shot. I'm paying for it now with hip replacements and different surgeries that I've had to have. I probably could have done another 2 years and been successful. But I think the biggest transition is like you have a lot of time. You don't have a lot of people with you. So you got to be comfortable with yourself. You got to be comfortable in a house by yourself, and that was never really an issue for me. I kind of enjoyed the solitude, and I really enjoyed just being in another country, eating different food, meeting different people. I think if you come at it with that perspective of gratitude rather than like loneliness, I think that's how you can be successful, because that ultimately is going to affect your performance on the basketball court as well.
I think a lot of people they don't put two and two together. They chase that dream. Once you get there, you catch what you were looking for this entire time, but then you look back, all of your family, all of your friends are back home. You're over there by yourself. Again, you're getting paid to play, which is awesome, but you also have to live a life over there. You're not, being paid to play for 24 hours a day. Like, you got to make friends, be a part of the community, be a part of the team, and it's not your culture. So, yeah, I think finding a good team, good country, good teammates, good coaches, all that stuff is really important to enjoying it in the long run and not just being a one and done.
Yeah, it's super cool. I mean, even yesterday, like the point guard I played with in Poland, one of the best point guard I ever played with, named Jerry Johnson. He played at Rider, scored 2,000 points, got a sniff in the NBA, and he had like a 14-15 career overseas, very high-level basketball. Like, when we were over together, his daughter was 2 years old, and now his son is a senior, and he was visiting McGarvey at Lafayette yesterday. So it's nice. Full circle. Those kind of things are just so cool, like when you have those relationships.
They last forever, man. And I know you got a busy morning with school, Dennis. I only got 2 more questions, but this one I was dying to ask, just based on what people typically look for. You've done a lot of coaching after every level of basketball and those sessions that you run in the awesome gym you got there. But maybe when you're working with athletes in small group or one-on-one sessions, what's typically it could be mental or it could be a skill thing. What's one mistake that you see athletes make all the time, young athletes, and how can people who are trying to get better avoid that common pitfall that a lot of kids fall into?
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things is connecting the mind to the body, right? So all of your coaches, whether it's soccer, whether it's lacrosse, whether it's basketball, it's grounded on skill acquisition. We're trying to have these kids acquire a skill, hone a skill, get better at a skill, right? So like when I'm working with a shooter, the only time I really train one-on-one is 6 a.m. And we have some devoted kids that come out here at 6 a.m. It's so cool. But I can tell a kid something about his form like 10 different ways. And it might not be till like the 9th thing I say to him that doesn't make any sense to me, but he's able to take that knowledge and then transition that into his body to make the basketball go a certain way. I would say the biggest pitfall or the biggest mistake or the biggest challenge for kids is when your mind's not present in your training, it's really hard to maximize your potential, because, you think about like, you don't obviously want to overcomplicate it and overthink things, but when you shoot a good shot and you put a stroke on a basketball, you have to figure out what allowed you to do that and then replicate that feeling. And in order to do that, your mind's got to be present with what you're feeling. I would say that's probably the biggest challenge. And the second challenge is just being short-sighted when it comes to outcome, right? So if you're shooting 200 shots and you only make 80 shots out of 200, like, you're missing 120 shots in a workout, right? That can feel debilitating for a young kid or any kid, but understanding like, that's 35-40%, you're making, and understanding that it's a process that next week we try to get 100, next week we try to get 110 out of 200. I think sometimes the patience piece to the process can sometimes cloud one's improvement.
And that kind of honestly perfectly leads into my last question, because I think this plays a huge part in it. And you're the perfect person to ask for this. So kids nowadays, it's different. Even when I was in high school, 15 years ago, I'm sure when you were in high school too, but social media and like outside noise, outside pressure is such a big factor for young athletes today. Anytime they want, if they have an iPhone, which I think most high school kids probably do, you can hop on, see pros succeeding at every level. Even your peers, no one puts up their bad tape. Like, you can see the kid down the street having their best game of all time. And then after maybe a subpar game from you or a subpar workout, you hop on and you just kind of feel down. You feel bad about yourself. Maybe not, every day with your kids, but with the kids in high school, the 1,300 athletes that you have at Souderton, how do you guys help them navigate that social pressure naudays and just, in a good way, stay in their own lane and not listen to the noise?
Yeah, we say eliminate the noise, and that noise is oftentimes the people that love you the most, right? And it's really, really hard to do. When you come home and you're hearing at the dinner table that you should be the 6th man, or you should be starting, or you should get more touches, or you should get more shots. Boy, it's really difficult to then perform that next day when you're listening to that voice, the voice of your coach, and then the most important voice, which is your internal voice. That is super hard to perform at that level. So it's honestly that we just beat it into them, a constant reminder that you have to eliminate that noise. And we reverse engineer that process through relational coaching. Like if the coach can forge a positive relationship with the student athlete, it's never going to be the same relationship. The 14th best player and the first best player, it's never going to be the same. And we want that experience to be the same, but it's not going to be the same. But we really try to lock in. If the coach leads with love and loves on those kids, oftentimes they trust that coach where they can block out that noise. When they sit at the dinner table and the parents want to talk trash about the coach, we believe that if there's a real relationship there and it's grounded in trust, sometimes that kid will stifle that noise and say, I'm not as good as this kid, you know. And like for me, you know, my junior year of high school, I was a starter. I was scoring like 14, 15 a game in the Catholic League, and my best friend was academically ineligible, or not academically ineligible, socially ineligible. He made a bad decision in September at a football game. He was ineligible for the whole first half of the season. He came back January 1, and I remember like I was still starting, played okay. He had like 15 his first game back in like 10 minutes. Second game back, he had 20. Third game back, he takes my starting spot. Fourth game back, I don't play the rest of the year. I don't get off the bench. And there was never a time where my parents were saying, you should be playing, you should be starting. You were just averaging 15 a game. You know, we were 10-2 and blah, 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 blah. Let's talk to the coach. My parents never said a word. Like, I get emotional about this because I thank them to this day. Because if they were to jump in there and swoop in there and buffer that failure, I would have never have worked. I would have never thought that I needed to work. So it really provided a venue where it was like I needed to stay hungry. And if they would have satiated that hunger by talking to the coach, or maybe I would have played 7 minutes because the coach would have felt bad, that would have killed my progression.
Junior year, though, that's tough. That's the year you want to get recruited going into AAU, so I'm sure that was doubly hard to stomach. And it was your buddy, too, so, you know, it's not like it was a rival coming in and stealing your spot. It's a good friend. But good for you for sticking that through and having the, you know, the patience and the courage to just get better in the offseason. That's how I'm sure you had a great senior year because, you know, the career continued from there. So that's awesome stuff, Dennis, man. Honestly, I appreciate you hopping on, giving your feedback. A ton of nuggets I think we're going to share here on Social Clips, but this has been a lot of fun, and appreciate you giving us your time, man.
Yeah, Gene, congrats on everything, man. Keep growing, keep doing your thing, and this is awesome. Thanks for having me on here.